Hello, and welcome to the Social Security Show. I'm Daniel Summers, Public Affairs Specialist in the Chicagoland area. As you can see, I'm not alone here. I've got a special guest today, and he is our Area Work Incentives Coordinator, John Marshall. He'll tell you just a bit about who he is and what he does in a moment. But I want you to know that this is a follow-up show on individuals who are working while disabled. John?
Good morning, everybody. My name is John Marshall. I'm the Chicago Metropolitan Northern Indiana Area Work Incentives Coordinator and the SOAR Homelessness Coordinator. What that actually means is that I coordinate at least two people in every field office. We have 23 field offices in the Chicago metropolitan area and Northern Indiana, and I have at least two people that deals with work incentive and who are work incentive liaisons and who are homeless contacts. And I coordinate those folks when we're dealing with the Social Security when it comes to homelessness or working while disabled.
Thank you, John. And we have John here for a special purpose because this is a follow-up show. We had so much reaction to our original Working While Disabled, the phone calls, the emails, the questions, that we decided to go into just a bit more detail. And who better to have here than John Marshall, the individual who work is the middle name of his position. So we're going to talk about working while disabled and explode some of the myths that exist. So John, right away I want to ask you something because I get this a lot. One of the things that I hear people say is, well, if I start working, I'll lose my disability benefit, and people depend on their benefits. So I want to hear it straight from the horse's mouth about what's going on with that, and is that true? False?
That is completely and utterly false. Ultimately, it's always, more often than not, it's going to be to your advantage to work. With SSI, it's always going to be your best interest to work because we have all sorts of different work incentives to try to help people to work. With Social Security, it's not about what you can't do, it's about what you can do. And we want to encourage people to work because let's face it, when you work, you pay FICA taxes, and FICA taxes is what makes Social Security go. You help fund people that are receiving benefits right now, and not only do you help yourself, you help the Social Security Administration and our fiscal responsibilities to serving everyone in the nation. That's
very interesting. Now, I know that we at Social Security have two programs for individuals who find themselves disabled. You mentioned SSI, but there's also disability. Is there any advantage to working if you get disability benefits at all?
Yes, as a matter of fact, there's a lot of advantage when you're working with disabilities. And I know sometimes you may not like this, but I often use the example of Beyonce. Everybody knows who Beyonce is. Let's say, and not that I would want this to happen, but let's say Beyonce fell down the stairs and hurt her back. She would be eligible for Social Security disability because you better believe she probably paid enough FICA taxes to be insured for Social Security disability insurance. Social Security disability insurance is an insurance-based program that's delivered by the Social Security Administration. It is an offshoot of the retirement system that we have, but ultimately is within the same system. You basically pay to get the insurance and to be insured, and then once you're insured, you could potentially receive the benefit once you become disabled. So ultimately, Beyonce, if she fell down the stairs and she hurt her back, she will be eligible for Social Security as well. And so she would just start getting her Social Security benefit. But let's say she started feeling better, and let's say maybe a year or maybe even a couple of months after she started getting her benefit, and then she started feeling better, and maybe she wanted to go back into doing her concerts or go into the studio or something like that, and she wanted to work. She could do that for 9 months and make whatever, who knows what Beyonce makes. She makes $1 gazillion. She can make $1 gazillion a month for 9 months and still get her Social Security check. But at the 10th month, we're going to ask Beyonce, hey, Beyonce, are you making more than $1,470 a month? gross. If she is, she won't be eligible for a check that month. If she isn't, if she's making $1,469.99 or less, she could still do that and still get her Social Security check. So a lot of times it is to your advantage to work while you're on Social Security disability insurance. And then we could keep that will go back and forth for 3 years. You can, if you make more than $1,470, then you're not eligible for a check. You make less than $1,069.99, you will be eligible for a check. And that goes back and forth for 3 years. And let's say that was, Beyonce making whatever gazillion dollars that she makes. And, and she's not eligible after the 10th month. So, and then then 3 years go by and she's still not eligible. But and let's say she had a relapse after, let's say after the 3 years, she has a relapse, so like 2 years afterwards. After that 3 years, you have 5 more years that if you have to stop working because of your disability, you can come right back on without having to file all over again. So she really will have 8 years and 9 months in order to try her hand out and working without having to file all over again. So you see the advantage of that. You have those 9 Beyonce months. You can work as much as you want and still get all your Social Security check. And then that 10th month, we're just going to be going back and forth using the $1,470 amount.
That's great. I want to parse out a couple of the things that you explained there because that was just perfect. Now, so what you're saying, for 9 months, that trial work period is what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. On that trial work period, it's your chance to test out your ability to work. We know that it might succeed. We hope so. Or it might fail. But because of that trial work period, you don't have to worry about losing your eligibility for disability. Mm-hmm. You get to test the opportunity and your ability to work. So that's a great thing, even for Beyonce.
In addition, if you go back to work and you work less than 6 months, then we consider it an unsuccessful work attempt. We won't even consider the work involved in your benefits at all. So ultimately, so there you could try your hand out in working, and if you can't do it, then you can go right back on. You can go back to benefits, and it's not going to affect your benefit at all. But again, you have those 9-month trial work period, the 10th month, and then really you have 8 years and 9 months to really try your hand out and working when it comes to Social Security disability insurance checks. And those are the checks that typically come on the 3rd of the month or alternate Wednesday of the month.
So it's a myth that Social Security is trying to end your benefits. Mm-hmm. From what you explained, it's obvious that we're trying to give you opportunities to work even while receiving your benefits. And then if something goes wrong, say the condition comes back, it's difficult. We have that process that you said you can go back on. We call it expedited reinstatement because we do it quickly. It's called expedited for a reason. We reinstate your benefits just because you have the same condition that prevented you from working, for which you were impaired or disabled to begin with.
That's right.
We start it right now, and we kind of ask questions later, don't we, John?
That's right.
Because we don't even send it, we'll send it back for another review. Yeah. But before we do, we're paying you.
Because all we're doing is really, when we send it back for the review, is to making sure that you have the same disability that you had before. But in the meantime, you got it, you can still get your check while we're doing that review.
That's interesting. So those are good protections to have. Mm-hmm. Now, I want to ask you about something else that's a little different than the protections. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that when people begin working, there's some things that they consider. For instance, we think about how much they make, certainly. Mm-hmm. However, there are some exceptions. I want you to tell us just a little about subsidy and IRWI. And I know that a lot of our public says, what's an IRWI? But that's an acronym for something that we know in Social Security. So we'll start right here with subsidy. Now, what is subsidy, John?
Well, first of all, you have to understand what we mean by the $1,470 amount. We're talking about what, the activity that somebody that's substantial, that they can actually get get paid for. And we consider people to be disabled if they cannot make more than $1,470 a month. And we're looking at the value of the work, not necessarily the amount that you're earning. I mean, let's say, for example, somebody who is, has a disability and, they have a learning disability and they might be working at Jules. And so, everybody else, and they're a beggar, and everybody else does the same job, but they allow the person with the mental disability to do less than everybody else because they understand that they're going to be a little slower or whatever. What we look at is the value of their job. Let's say you had to make 10 widgets if you were in a factory, if you were in a factory normally, but but the employer allows you to make 5 because they know that you have a disability. We look at the value of the making of the 5 as opposed to the 10 widgets. And so we look at the value, even though you might get more than $1,470 a month, but the value of your work may be under that. And so that's what we're looking at when we're looking at subsidy. We're looking at whether there's an accommodation being made because of your condition that, where other people will have to do more than you and you do less.
Great. We look at that on a percentage basis here at Social Security. For example, with the example that John just gave, that person was making 50% less widgets than everyone else. So we would look at 50% of their salary as being subsidized. In other words, they didn't earn it, and we don't, quote, count it against them as earnings. We will look, even if their paycheck was identical.
That's right.
We would look at only 50% of their pay. That's very interesting, John.
It's really the value of the work that we're looking at. It's not the money per se. I mean, it's an indicator for us, but it's not necessarily money. We're looking at the value of your activity. And when we look at the ultimate amount of the substantial gainful activity is $1,470 a month. Now, with impairment-related work expenses, I know you're referred to it as IRWE. We have all sorts of acronyms in government. So let's, take off that acronym and actually say what it is. It's called an impairment-related work expense. Basically, if you have to come out of your pocket for anything in order to work, and without it, you would be unable to work, it's an impairment-related work, and it's because of your disability, it's an impairment-related work expense. So, ultimately, let's say you had to pay someone in order to coach you, at the beginning of your work, and that came out of your pocket in order for you to try to coach you and get you, up to speed and trying to do the particular job. Then that money that you're paying that person, that coach, will not be looked at when we're looking at your overall wages. So you might make $2,000 a month and potentially be ineligible, but then you're coming out of your pocket, $600 a month. And so you'll be under the substantial gainful activity amount then, because that money that you gave to that counselor, gave that counselor is excluded. It's like it's invisible to us. So ultimately, that's what it is. If you have a disability and you have to come out of your pocket because of your disability in order to work, and without it you being able to work, that's an impairment-related work expense.
Great, and all of those are subtractable. John, as a claims representative, I saw that pretty often with transportation. For instance, I'd have a person who, because of their impairment, they couldn't take the bus, they had to have a taxi cab or arrange to pay someone to take them because of their situation. And those expenses come off the top, right off the top of the money, before we consider whether or not you are potentially under the substantial gainful work activity amount. So just because the numbers look like you won't be eligible, please don't try to do this at home, they say on television, right? Just bring it to Social Security and make sure that we know about your expenses. We will ask you about them, but understand those could be the difference between you being eligible for disability on a continuing basis and it ending because of your work.
Well, as a matter of fact, in Chicago and in the Chicago metropolitan area, the RTA and the CTA has a program, a taxi cab program, where they actually, they can come and pick you up and have to take you because if you use it because of your disability, you will be able to use it as an impairment-related work expense. So they can pick you up from your house, and then ultimately, up to I think it's $30 $30 a ride, and ultimately you can go anywhere in the city of Chicago for under $30. So ultimately, if you had that expense and you needed it in order to work, you could not take the bus, you could not take the Pace paratransit because of the situation, then you will be able to exclude that $30 a month. When we look at your wages and determine what your benefit is going to be.
Wow, that's very interesting. But John, there's something that I don't think gets talked about enough. Mm-hmm. Like, you're telling me a lot about incentives, and that's great information. You're telling us about things that aren't counted. But one thing that I think that is overlooked pretty often, and you mentioned it to me earlier in the break room, was the student earned income exclusion. Could you tell us a little bit about what that is? One
of my favorite things to do is to do the student earned income exclusion and talk to parents of children with disabilities. These are students under the age of 22. If they're going to school and they're attending school, they can, and this is for supplemental security income purposes. The supplemental security income program is a needs-based program, and it's based on income and resources. And so we take into account what your income and what your resources are when you make a determination of whether you're going to get the full benefit amount, which is $914 a month. But when you work, and this is why I always say that when you're on SSI, it's always going to be in your best interest to work no matter what, because we look at less than half of the wages that you earn, and when we make a determination of how we're going to pay your SSI. You can make $1,000 in wages and still get $456.50 of SSI. That's without any other type of work incentives whatsoever. So you can ultimately you could work and earn $1,000, and then you get the $456.50. That's $1,456.50 instead of $914. That's what I mean. It's always in your best interest to work while you're on SSI, because you're always going to get more money, always. And because it's a federal-based program, nobody's else's income in the household is going to be affected, because because whatever you're receiving is based on your income. You have to, and this is without any work incentives whatsoever, you have to make $1,913 to get to $0 in SSI, and that means again you compare $1,913 to $914, and you see the advantage that you have there. And again, you're still going to be eligible to get your Medicaid, because we don't even question whether you're eligible for Medicaid in the state of Illinois if you're on SSI until you make more than $38,000 a year. And then even then, depending on how much you use your Medicaid, you're still going to potentially will be eligible for it. I've seen people make $80,000 a year, and because they used their Medicaid so much and they were on SSI, they still were eligible for free Medicaid in the state of Illinois with no spend downs. And so that's all without any type of work incentives. But the students, that's a whole nother thing. That's a whole nother level. If you're a student under the age of 22 and you're regularly attending school, then you can make, get this, $2,220 a month and still get all $914 of your SSI. And so, and this is why I like doing parents and, parents groups when they have children with disabilities. Because I tell them, look, it's not about what they can't do, it's about what they can. And if they can do it, they can learn up to that $2,220 a month and still get all $914 of their SSI and still get all their Medicaid. It's like that $2,220 is taken off the table. So you could bring all that extra money into the household without affecting anybody else in the household if the person is on SSI and they're a student under the age of 22.
So let me get this straight. I'm going to recap. You can get more than twice as much money, continue to have your Medicaid coverage, and have no fear of losing your supplemental security income. That's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, and frankly, when I do those events with the parents, the parents' eyes, get wide open, and then sometimes the students, the kids will be like, "Oh my goodness, they're about to put me out to work."
Work.
I mean, yes, I gotta go to work. My parents are about to make me go to work. But ultimately, again, the way we look at it, and the way Social Security has always looked at it, is not about what you can't do; it's about what you can do. And we try to provide as much, and that's what Social Security is. It's always been a quilted blanket that we, full of programs that we try to cover people when they have issues about disabilities, or when they have retirement issues, or when they lose a loved one, or and things like that. So ultimately, we try to provide that blanket of coverage for them, for people so that they can do things, and not only help themselves, but like I said, help the Social Security Administration pay the benefits of everybody else, and the general society.
You're potentially increasing your own benefit.
That's right.
Sense. Now, John, one of the things that came out of our last broadcast is I got a question that I hadn't heard in a long time because I haven't been taking applications for a while, folks. And it was this. I had a person who asked a golden question here, and here is what it was, and I want you to respond to this.
Okay.
But we're switching gears from SSI to disability here, so I'm
okay,
giving a big build up here, everyone.
That's okay.
Now, a person was worried that when they began getting disability, perhaps if they applied for that and got it, that they would be hurting their retirement amount, which is a myth, we know. But I want you to go into a little bit deeper so that people understand why you don't hurt your retirement when you get disability.
Okay. Now, when you're getting disability and you're working, you're still going to be paying those FICA taxes. And remember, when you retire, we're going to take your highest 35 years and then and come up with the retirement amount. The more that you work, the more FICA taxes you pay, the more you're going to end up increasing your check. Or if you're just receiving SSI and you're receiving SSI and you start working, you start paying FICA taxes. If you're under the age of 26, all you need is a year and a half worth of work in order to become insured. Now, what we typically look at when you're working to become insured is that you have to have at least 5 years out of the last 10 years in order to be considered to be eligible for Social Security disability insurance. And so, you have to have the 10 years of work as well once you get to over the age of 32. So ultimately, the more you work, the more you pay into the insurance, the more you're going to ultimately get when you get your monthly benefit. Again, Social Security disability insurance, and just like retirement, just Social Security retirement insurance is an insurance. You're paying FICA taxes, and the more you pay into it, the more you're going to end up getting in terms of your monthly benefit once once you file for those benefits.
And let's remember, unlike when you apply for your retirement early, when you become disabled, your benefit is unreduced. In other words, you get the same amount that you would get at your full retirement age, whether it's 66 or 67, as if you were that age. It doesn't matter if you're 35 or 25 or 55.
That's right.
So you can't hurt that benefit. And in fact, if you were disabled at age 62, you could take that higher benefit and it would be as if you waited.
And the other thing is that every 3 years, and this is something that people really don't know about, every 3 years or so, we'll go back and recompute your benefit based on the extra money that you paid into your taxes and look to increase your benefit. So when when you're working, we're always going to be on the lookout of increasing your benefit based on your work. Again, Social Security wants you to work because, let's face it, you're feeding the beast. You're feeding the Social Security Administration. You're helping people, and what you pay into now, what the work that you're doing now is paying the retirement or the disability benefit of people that's receiving benefits now. So ultimately, you're helping not only yourself, but you're helping them and keeping the Social Security Administration more benefit more solvent. And of course, the fact that you're making money and spending money, you're helping your community as well.
I'd like to thank our guest, John Marshall, for being here. He's a wealth of information. He knows this stuff, folks. And I'd like to remind you that if you have more questions, to look for this pamphlet, Working While Disabled. It's available online and in your local Social Security office. Thank you, and I will see you next time. Have a great afternoon, evening, or morning.
Good evening, everybody.